We collected their body odor by asking them to wear just cotton pads in the armpits. We put these in jars, and then we just let other people smell them.
Oh my God, this is the best study ever. Sweat is just a mixture of water and different electrolytes and some products of metabolism that come out through our skin, but it's completely odorless.
If you look at the brain, it doesn't look as we are quite prepared to process body odor signals in the way animals do.
Hello and welcome back to Strange Health from The Conversation. We're the show that looks at all the weird and wonderful things that your body does. And I'm Katie Edwards. I'm health and medicine editor at The Conversation in the UK. And we're an independent source of news and analysis powered by academics and journalists working together to make evidence accessible.
And I'm Dan Baumgart, and I'm a GP and lecturer in health and life sciences in the marvellous city of Bristol.
So Dan, we're talking today about body odour, which is really quite a difficult subject, isn't it? Because it's got lots of baggage with it. So it's not really just about how you smell or, what deodorant you use. It's got all this social stuff, a lot of shaming around it. So I think, body odour, it's not a personal failing, is it? It's biology, it's bacteria, and it's chemistry, and they're interacting.
Exactly. Yeah, body odours come from all sorts of places, not just the obvious areas. We often think of sort of like the armpits and the crevices and nooks and crannies we've got in our bodies, but it comes from across the whole skin. It comes from bodily fluids like urine. It comes from our breath and even from the gunk that comes out of our ears.
And we were inspired to make this episode because of this trend for chlorophyll shots that's on social media in the minute. And I was a bit obsessed with this for a while. I very nearly bought some of this stuff because the before and after shots of people with acne or skin problems who'd purportedly taken these shots every day, they looked amazing. And, it was this idea that it kind of purifies you. It's a bit of that detoxing thing, isn't it? It purifies you from the inside out. Shall we have a look at one of these videos?
Yeah, let's, because they're quite lurid green, aren't they? Some of these shots
yeah.
I've seen.
Now, speaking of showers, this is really cool. This is liquid chlorophyll, and this you drink a little tablespoon a day. It's like an internal body deodorant. Chlorophyll.
So she's saying that it stops your sweat from smelling. Now, you saw her skin. That
Looks
was
brilliant.
Fabulous skin, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
You see, this is the kind of thing that draws me right in.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any truth to this? Because I was thinking that sweat doesn't actually smell anyway.
No, it doesn't. It's completely odourless. So sweat is just a mixture of water and different electrolytes and some products of metabolism that come out through our skin. But it's completely odourless.
Right. So do we need to buy chlorophyll then? Will that help?
So chlorophyll is basically the bright green pigment which is found in green plants, which allows them to make food via photosynthesis. It's the process by which plants take in sunlight and they convert that into food for themselves and into oxygen. So there's a couple of claims going around, as well as great skin, that if you take chlorophyll, it can really oxygenate your bloodstream, get more oxygen into it. But we don't need oxygen that way. First of all, we take it in through our lungs and into our bloodstream. And secondly, it wouldn't work anyway. And that's because you need sunlight to make oxygen and food, glucose, via photosynthesis, and there's no sunlight inside your body.
So we can't use chlorophyll?
So with chlorophyll and odour neutralization, like this video is talking about, they're supposing basically that chlorophyll has got this ability to absorb compounds which make bad odours. So there's been a little bit of research which has looked into it in a bit more detail. And they've used oral chlorophyll to reduce the smell of urine and feces with some variable results. It's rather old research as well. All it creates mostly is a lot of green poo. So it's so you have to think about what goes in must come out.
But I saw one video where the bloke who was, he was selling a product, but he was saying that the green poo is because the chlorophyll is taking all the toxins out of your system, and that once you get rid of all the green poo, like that'll be your body being cleansed, and then you'll stop like having bodily odors.
Yeah, I wouldn't read into that too much. With chlorophyll, unlike any substance that you take in, anything with a bright color is just going to dye our feces. Because it's really, really dark, it can sometimes make your stool appear quite dark in color as well. But chlorophyll's also been used for other things as well. It's been used externally, and it's been used to make sort of natural deodorants and dressings for wounds, because there's a potential link that people have been investigating in it reducing bacterial growth, which is also to blame for bad odors on the skin. But to be honest, the jury's out about it, really. It's subjective rather than objective evidence, and we tend to find it's based on opinions rather than actual consistent results.
So what actually goes on in our body then that creates the body odors? What happens?
Sweat, for clarification, is odourless, and it really does just help the body to regulate body temperature. That's one of its main roles. And everybody thinks that it is the enemy, but it is when it sits on the skin, because what it does is it acts as a sort of like a reservoir for bacteria to break down all the compounds within it, because inside the sweat it's not just water and electrolytes. It's got proteins, it's got fats, it's got those products of excretion like urea, and this causes a variety of really sort of quite unpleasant odors, according to the compound, but also according to the bacteria that's having its dinner on it. You take protein fragments, for instance, they get broken down into the same sort of sulfurous odorants that we normally associate with body odor, things that give out for sort of a smell for rotten eggs or onions, potentially, if it becomes really, really strong. Lipids, which are sort of fatty substances, tend to get broken down into smaller fatty acids, which unfortunately smell like cheese. So the horrible smell that you sometimes get in between your toes and stuff like that. Sometimes
Well, I don't.
Well, I know, not everybody, I hasten to add. And then you've also got compounds that come from steroid metabolism. So androstanol gives quite an animalic smell.
What is androstanol?
So androstanol is a sort of a precursor to steroids, which are used in our body to govern our metabolism and to affect our energy levels. When that gets broken down, it gives off this sort of musky smell that some people do quite like in body odor, if that's what floats your boat.
But there are these conditions, aren't there, Dan, where, you know, your body does produce kind of unusual or noticeable body odors, and they can be really debilitating for the people who are experiencing them because of, you know, the social baggage that comes with all kinds of odors. And we certainly grow up with all that kind of prejudice, don't we? Like at school, I remember smell was the thing that, you know, it was properly weaponized as like a bullying thing. What is happening with those syndromes?
You're right. There are certain disorders which can present with an odd or strong body odor, and fish odor syndrome is one of them. It's another name for a condition called trimethylaminiuria, and it's basically a metabolic disorder. It's rather rare, and it's a disorder where the body makes higher levels of trimethylamine, which is a particular compound, metabolic compound, which is excreted in larger amounts in sweat and in urine and in breath. And one of the challenges with it is that the odor is often described as a sort of a rotten fish smell. And in patients with this condition, diet manipulation is really, really important.
So it's particular foods then that trigger it?
Yeah, there's certain foods, sort of choline-rich foods, so things like eggs and certain vegetables like peas and greens, and offal and milk that can trigger the greater production of trimethylamine and therefore make the problem worse. So one of the ways around it is manipulating your diet and following some dietary restrictions in order to restrict the odor.
And what other kinds of conditions might have like a noticeable smell with them?
So, for instance, kidney diseases can cause quite ammonic type smells, so urine smelling type odors, and that can sometimes come from disorders of the kidneys. The other thing that can sometimes cause sort of fruity smells are diabetes when it's not been particularly well controlled. Right. And if blood sugars rise very high, your body starts to break down ketones, and ketones on your breath smell sort of a bit like nail varnish remover or pear drops, you know, that sort of distinctive smell.
Is that the same as the symptoms that were described by people who are doing the kind of high protein diet?
Yeah, and liver failure can do that as well. It causes what we call hepatic fetor, and fetor is a different name for bad smell on the breath as well. but they're more the rotten fruit sort of kind. And then there are other rarer diseases, things like maple syrup urine disease, where urine takes on a very, very sweet
Have you
smell.
made that one up, Dan?
No, promise you, it's a real condition, much
Ah.
more serious actually than trimethylaminuria or fish odor. It's where the urine takes on a very, very sweet smell because, again, your body's incapable of metabolizing amino acids, the breakdown of different proteins, and they work their way into the urine. It's a bit of a misnomer because you think maple syrup urine disease, it must look like maple syrup, and it doesn't. It looks just like normal urine, but it has this very, very distinctive sweet smell to it. But this one requires really, really strict dietary management because it can be really serious. It can sort of cause organ damage, even brain damage if left untreated.
Oh my word, that's horrendous. So to find out then what our body odour says about us and how healthy we are, I've been speaking to an expert in the psychology of body odour. And that's coming up in our Ask the Expert section. And today for Ask the Expert, I'm talking to Professor Mats Olsen. And you're a professor of experimental psychology in the Department of Clinical Neuroscience at the Karolinska Institutet. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it right. Very good.
Thank you, Mats. Thank you. I'm practically fluent now, aren't I?
Yeah.
In Stockholm, in Sweden, where you research the way that we perceive body odour. Welcome to Strange Health.
Thank you very much.
Humans are slightly obsessed with smelling good. From an evolutionary perspective, Mats, why does body odour matter so much?
Well, the first question we should pose is, does it matter? And that's not so clear for humans. I mean, if you go to the animal kingdom, you'll find a lot of good examples that they communicate with each other, so they affect each other's behavior. And there's a lot of examples of that, like a moth, female moth can sort of call for a male moth in a very sort of mechanistic way. But if you look at humans, it's very clear that we do have body odor. And if we wouldn't wash, we would smell quite a lot. And we also have an apparatus in the skin. I mean, we have sweat glands, we have sebaceous glands, we have scent glands that are situated in strategic places in on the skin, around the genitals, around the nipples. And if you go again to animals, you will see that they also have their distribution of scent glands in similar ways. But for them, it's very clear that it works, that the body sends a signal or a cue to the other individual that sort of either affects the recipient's physiology or behavior. But when we get to humans, this is not as clear. I mean, in the Western world that I'm familiar with, people typically wash all the time and use perfume, so we don't really know how it would be if we would smell like we did a few hundred years ago. Maybe then it would be more clear that body odor matters. What we do lack, if you compare it to other mammals, is that we lack an accessory olfactory bulb in the brain, the vomeronasal organ that sort of connects to that part of the brain that is important. So if you look at the sort of the brain, it doesn't look as we are quite prepared to process body odor signals in the way animals do.
So, Mats, do you think then that we could actually be messing up biology by washing so much and putting on so much perfume?
Well, in theory, yes, because if there is information here, we can miss it. I mean, and there are some interesting studies saying, for instance, that we may be able to communicate our emotional state through body odors. And if you have perfume, it's likely that will mask that cue or signal.
Because I always think, when you watch historical dramas on TV and, they're getting really, really close and it's a love scene and they're kind of breathing all over each other and they're getting really close. And I always think they would stink.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think, really, would you really be getting that close to them?
Yeah.
So if we all stopped washing, for example, would we become nose blind to scents? Because I'm just thinking that the other day, Matt, I went to a supermarket and it was quite full. And I followed around, unfortunately, this man who, I mean, he was a stranger to a bar of soap, let's just say that. And it was dreadful. And I can't imagine ever smelling somebody from that distance and thinking, oh, delicious.
Let's say that we move back like a few hundred years and maybe people then didn't wash as much. And then we would all, in an absolute sense, smell more. So we would be able to smell each other, and you could maybe feel who is sort of in the other room when you get in through the door. But it's reasonable that we would have then an acceptance for body odor. It wouldn't be synonymous with, this person have a bad hygiene or a poor mental health or something. It will be natural. And my guess is that you would divide people into better smelling and worse smelling, as you do with maybe when you classify people's sort of faces or body shapes or anything.
So what kind of information does body odor carry about a person?
It's an approach avoidance instrument. I like this. I like this person. That's sort of main message there. We don't have a language for odors. I mean, I could go to Italy and then I could call you and I could describe a vase with words so that you will see a vase for your inner eye that is very similar to the one I'm describing to you with words. But if I would find an interesting new odor that I really like, and I try to describe that to you, it will be impossible. There is no word for it, right? I could say maybe I could say like, well, it smells like jasmine and cinnamon, and then you get a hang of it. But there's no language to describe the odor itself.
So can you smell fear, Mats?
Some studies actually indicate that. I mean, to start with, if you're really fearful, that could affect your bodily processes. Maybe you sweat more and you have sort of the stress system alarmed over a long time. That could probably put the new molecules into the bloodstream that comes up to the skin through sweat glands. But in the short run, is there like a cueing system or signaling system? And there are some studies indicating that emotions can actually be somehow communicated. And the typical experiment shows that if you have a person looking at the videos that could be either happy or induce fear, and then you collect the body odor from these people looking at these videos and let other people smell these body odors. And then you measure the muscles in the face of the recipient. So if you have a person that's experienced fear or disgust, you can see that those typical muscles that you use to signal fear and disgust is more active.
So fear sweat would smell different from like exercise sweat then?
Well, these particular studies have shown is more this sort of low conscious type of communication. The studies where they actually, smell this body odor and tell me, does this smell fear or happiness or disgust? They have not been so clear, I think. So if there is something going on, it might be bypassing some more elaborate conscious processing.
I mean, obviously then body odor must influence how we kind of judge or respond to other people. Why is smell then so strongly tied to attraction and like mate choice?
One is sort of the idea of that it's hard to explain love and why you fall in love. So you say that maybe that you have chemistry as a metaphor, and you know what's happening between other animals. So it's not a far-fetched idea that it would be part of an explanatory model why you fall in love, that you actually have a match. Even though it makes a lot of sense, it doesn't seem to really be clear that the nose is there to smell out. And again, when it comes to that you really love the smell of the person you're in love with. And my personal belief is that you love the smell because you're in love with that person and not the other way around, right?
Yeah. So there's a t-shirt test, isn't there, where researchers got a load of t-shirts that had been worn by men and then got blindfolded women to smell the t-shirts and say which ones they preferred. So do you think that humans have got pheromones, or at least like pheromone type signals?
I have earlier done some investigations looking at particular components of body odors that has been mentioned in the literature as putative pheromones. And yes, if you look at hundreds of studies, you will see that sometimes you see effects of body odor components, but they're not especially easy to interpret, and they are not so consistent between studies. So if you would ask researcher in this field today, I guess that no researcher or few researchers would say that we have this type of pheromonal communication that you can observe in other species. It would be lovely if we can find it. My guess, my bet would be on the sort of area around the nipple. I mean, what could be more important to get the newborn child to find and be stimulated to suck on the nipple? That's my guess. If we'll find it there first.
So do you think that a lot of what we think of as like good or bad smells then is more cultural than biological?
Yes, very much, very much. If you look at sort of the newborn baby, it doesn't really have much of strong preferences for different odors. For us that have babies or had babies, you know how they can handle poop and in certain ages. And then they learn that this is really not good, right? So I would say that more or less you're born with no preferences. I mean, obviously odors can be stinging and painful, but then you address another part of the nervous system. So then you learn this is good and this is bad. And if it's nutritious, you start to learn it. And you can also see that in those vast differences in cultural preferences for different type of edibles. I mean, here in Sweden, we have this sour herring that is almost world famous. Basically fermented rotted herring, and when you open the can, it's like, oh my god. If you're not sort of into that culture and you have sort of learned that this rotten smell is, you could work with it, right? Because you will have a party, you will drink schnapps and eat other stuff and put sort of stuff on it that covers up a bit of the taste of it.
I think I'd need quite a lot of schnapps for that rotten herring thing, Matt.
Yeah, you need it for sure.
It'd have to be a party for sure, yeah. There's a long history of linking illness with smell. So is there real science behind that?
Yes, for sure. Before we realized that this was about pathogens, germs, up to the middle of 1900s or so, there was an idea of how we got sick, that it was through bad air, like malaria. And also the word miasma means in Greek something like bad air. So the idea was that what smells bad makes you sick. And that is a pretty good proxy, because things that smells bad often contain a lot of pathogens. Therefore, we think that we evolved the emotion of disgust to stay healthy and don't approach things that are bad for us. And there is a lot of different types of reports, a little bit anecdotal in the literature. For instance, scurvy, that was found to smell putrid. And we also know like diabetes.
Yeah.
Make people get a certain acetone, like breath, a little bit rotten apple. And so there is a lot of anecdotal experience from that. And if you talk to caregivers or medical personnel, that they will be able to smell out different type of diseases. Looking at more modern research, for instance, you had this field with dogs smelling out diseases. I mean, dogs are really have a very good sense of smell. And they have now been shown to be able to smell a lot of things, specifically different cancers.
But you've run experiments, haven't you?
Yes, I looked a bit on this. So we ran a number of studies where we have made people experimentally sick. And that means
how do you do that?
We inject in the bloodstream something that's called lipopolysaccharides, which is essentially molecules from E. coli bacteria, but it's just a molecule.
Never.
Yes, we do. So the immune system, they recognize that, oh, here's a stranger, let's launch a systemic inflammation. So you feel as if you're coming down with the flu. You can get like 1 degree of fever, and you get that typical sickness feeling, but then it just washes out because there's no pathogens there. And during this few hours, people are sort of technically sick. So we have been studying sort of the different sickness cues that appear in these individuals compared to when they come in another time, the same person, but just getting a saline shot. And then they're healthy, right? Then we can see that they express a number of tiny cues, like the skin color of the lips and the rest of the face changes a bit, and the emotional expressions, how they move. But we also realized from a couple of studies that within these few hours, they actually start to smell a tiny bit different. And on the scale from good to bad, a little bit towards they smell worse. So that indicates that maybe this sense of smell can actually pick up like an early systemic signal of sickness. So these people do not sort of cough or sneeze, blow their noses or have any sort of rashes. They look kind of normal, just a little bit more tired and a little bit tiny differences.
You've blown my mind a bit. So you injected him to make him a bit ill. But how, and they smelled a bit different. Like, how did you know they smelled a bit different?
We collected their body odor by asking them to wear just cotton pads in the armpits.
Yeah.
And then we put these armpit pads in jars, and then we just let other people smell them. In a study.
Oh my God, this is the best study ever.
Well, it's not that bad because, I mean, people are instructed to use scentless soaps before they come in.
Yeah.
So these odors are very, very, in most cases, very faint. So you could hardly feel something there.
So how did you describe it then?
Well, we actually tried to see whether there would sort of some odor quality will pop out. You know, that they... No,
like
the
sour.
sick people smell more like cumin or something, but it didn't turn out. So the only label they used more commonly for people that were sick compared to healthy was that they smell more sweat. So that typical sweaty odor that is we typically are not very fond of, they smell more of that, and that's why they smelled worse.
Oh, interesting. Because I was thinking that it would be more of a sour smell.
Yes, but I don't think it came out quite significant. Do you have any experience of your sort of family members?
Yeah, because that's what I was
sour when they're sick.
That's what I was thinking. But maybe it's just that. I mean, you might have just come across a rare talent here, Matt, that I can sniff out illness.
Actually, what you're talking about there, that maybe you can, and the thing is that we have a few hundred odor receptors in our olfactory epithelium up in the nose. But they vary a bit. So I may have a few that you don't have, and you may have a few that I don't have. So that makes that people are quite different in what they can smell. Some people think that coriander doesn't fly
can't bear it.
Yeah, like you probably have that receptor. So it becomes too strong and maybe reminds you about soap or something, maybe?
I cannot eat it. It sets my salivary glands off. Like I want to be sick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Honestly, I think you found a talent. I'm just...
Yeah. what I'm saying that it could be actually that you have receptors that are not so common and make you good at smelling out certain types of disease. I mean, actually, there is a famous example of a woman that started to smell out Parkinson. The story was that she noticed that her husband's shirts started to smell different from the neck here. And then he got Parkinson. And then some researcher thought this was interesting, and she was tested with a number of Parkinson body odor shirts and some healthy ones. And this story has it that she sort of really nailed this test, more or less. And then following that in the UK, there has been quite a number of studies looking at Parkinson, and they are seen that if you analyze the sebum, I mean that oily thing on the skin that protects you, it seems that it has another composition than healthy people.
Could body odor ever become a reliable diagnostic tool in medicine?
Yes, I think so, because there's also a whole new field now inspired by this idea of that disease smells, and that's called e-nosis. For instance, take Parkinson as a theoretical example. Okay, Parkinson smells. Now, researchers are trying to decipher which molecules differ between healthy and sick. And if you know which molecules differ, you could build an e-nose that directly targets those molecules. And then you would have a very easy and non-invasive device for diagnosing diseases. So it makes sense. It's just you need to do a lot of science to get there, because if you take body odor, it's not about a few components. We talk about hundreds of molecules. And in that bouquet of many molecules, find what is different is very hard.
Wow, well, that's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us today, Matt.
Well, thank you.
Professor Matt Olsen, who's a professor of experimental psychology in the Department of Clinical Neuroscience at the Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, Sweden. I just found that absolutely fascinating talking to Matt, because, you know, I started off just thinking about, you know, body odor and the way that, you know, we kind of taught to think about it. But then talking to Matt made me really reframe it, because it's exactly like he says. It's more social than it is biological. We get sold all this stuff to try, especially women get sold all this stuff to try and kind of contain and cleanse. And, you know, the idea that natural bodies, there is something deficient, or there's something wrong with them, or there's something that we have to be worried about. Like we've got to be constantly concerned that we smell in some way, that, you know, our breath's bad, or, you know, we've got BO. But actually, you know, humans just naturally produce scent, and that carries information, important information. So yeah, what did you think about him?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's a normal part of life. It's a factor of sweat, and it's a factor of bacteria. And the bacteria we have on our skin is just really a part of life. It's our microbiome. It's normally there. We can scrub and scrub to try and get rid of it, but it will always bounce back.
But for people who are genuinely, you know, concerned about body odor, what can be done if you want to reduce it?
You've got to think about the ways in which you can practically reduce body odor. And it is repeated short-term solutions, looking at reducing the bacterial count on your skin and by reducing sweat. Simple measures like washing can help clear the sweat and wash away the bacteria that might be starting to get a little bit frisky as a result of all that sweat production. But you'll also see that some people are making use of things like antibacterial treatments, soaps and alcohol and benzoyl peroxide, which is another agent which some people use for acne. I don't know if you've ever seen it before.
Yeah, I've seen people on social media using benzoyl peroxide and also glycolic acid.
Yeah, there's sort of natural things like tea tree oil and stuff which people use. But benzoyl peroxide can have some really good effects, but you've got to be aware of the side effects. It can bleach all your clothes and your bedding, and it can also bleach your skin. You've got to be aware of the effect that all of these things are having on your skin. So things like antibacterial soaps with harsh chemical agents in it, or alcohol, can dry the skin out and affect its function. They can irritate it. They can even alter those bacterial colonies on the skin for the worse as well. Now, for people who get really sweaty as well, I don't know if you've also seen some people are resorting to Botox injections. Yeah.
And why would you do that?
So some people do naturally sweat more than other people, and some people have a condition called hyperhidrosis, which is just basically the medical term for increased sweating. So sweat glands activate more and release more sweat onto the skin, and that can sometimes cause embarrassing sort of sweat patches in different areas, which makes some people very, very self-conscious. So Botox can help switch off that sweat response, and it can prove really, really effective in some people.
But with antiperspirants and stuff, I mean, obviously there's a difference between antiperspirants and deodorants.
Yes, there is.
What is the difference? What are they doing, the different types?
Well, antiperspirants basically contain aluminium salt. And when you spray that under your arms or in any other area of body, what it effectively does is it forms a little series of microscopic plugs, which effectively go into the sweat glands and prevents the sweat from coming out.
And is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine, but it's not something that stays there permanently. It's a plug that just stays on for anything from a couple of minutes to even a couple of hours.
What's the difference with the deodorant then?
These different deodorants and different agents are, some of them are fragrance based, some are true antiperspirants. A lot of them, body sprays, may just have fragrances in them, which are just designed to mask the smell. In fact, that's what they used to do back in sort of medieval times. There was a lot of masking of smell going on. They had perfumed hankies and perfumed gloves and other things in order to mask smells. And
But
it's a tradition that's carried on.
I think I'd rather smell like somebody's body odour than smell that really strong perfume. You know, when you're on a train or something and you're gagging on whatever perfume they've got, and it makes me feel sick. It actually gives me travel sickness.
Or if someone in the office is dousing themselves in aftershave and you're sat in this Paco Rabanne hothouse getting, you know, sort of like...
Other aftershaves are available.
I think it's Paco Rabanne personally that I have a bit of an aversion to. Yeah, it's an age-old formula. And again, sort of back in medieval times, apothecaries and old physicians believed it was an imbalance of those body humours. And so they would resort to sort of things like that old chestnut bloodletting, or perhaps giving you a pint of vinegar to quaff. Personally, I'd rather stink, if I'm absolutely honest with you, rather than having to resort to those.
Yeah, having a few leeches put on just because, yeah.
But yeah, these different deodorants and different agents are, some of them are fragrance based, some are true antiperspirants. And you can also get some stronger antiperspirants as well, particularly for people who sweat more and are conscious of that, with higher levels of aluminium salts in them. But they're usually reserved for people who've got really severe or more persistent sweating problems.
And when's best time to put these things on?
Well, the trick is actually best to put them on when the skin's dry rather than wet. And that's simply because you've the problem that if your skin's wet, the deodorant, or sorry, the antiperspirant, I should say, is much less likely to create a plug on the skin. So don't do it straight out the shower, or make sure you dry off properly first of all. And the other thing as well is often quite better at night time because your sweat glands are less active, because you're less active overnight. It means that those little plugs are more likely to form.
Oh, Dan, you do know some stuff, don't you?
A couple of little tricks of the trade.
So what have we learned then in this episode, Dan? Well, what I've learned personally is that science doesn't support the level of concern that there is around body odours. Most body odours normal, it's healthy, it's driven by bacteria, just doing what bacteria does. Chlorophyll might have some applications in very specific settings, but it's unlikely to do anything miraculous. And, you know, so I think that, you know, body odours just become something else to try and sell us as a problem rather than just being a natural thing.
And a natural thing that we shouldn't be worrying about as much. I think that's right. Our discomfort with body odour says about as much as social expectations and insecurity as it does about the biology.
I agree, Dan. Huge thanks to Matt Olsen at Karolinska Institutet in Sweden for helping us unpack all of this.
And if you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with anyone who's ever wondered whether their deodorant's actually doing anything at all.
And if you've seen a claim online and thought, get away with it, that can't possibly work, then we want to hear from you. Email us at strangehealth@theconversation.com. That's strangehealth, all one word, @theconversation, all one word.com.
Strange Health is produced by Gemma Ware, with editing and mixing by Anouk Millet and artwork by Alice Mason.
Thanks very much. See you
Bye
next time.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.